Yes, absolutely. And Marge set that up greatly. I kind of like to look at it as a no pain, no gain. And right now there's no pain. We don't have much shortage in the market, and we haven't for the last couple of years. We all expected it. We had pipelines coming online. We had 39 plus plants of ethanol plants or ammonia plants that were going to sequester their CO2. And then we kind of got into, well, is 45Q going to hold up? Are we going to get these tax credits? What if I'm using it? And we expected 2024 to be kind of a rough year for CO2, and it just wasn't. And in 2025, it hasn't been. We haven't seen these shortages. But as Maura noted, there's at least 3 facilities in California that will go offline in the next 12 months. I think that accounts for about 700 tons per day of offline, and then there's others slated. And now many of these states are getting primacy, which enables them to regulate themselves as a state to get these Class 6 wells approved quickly. You're seeing that in Illinois and Indiana and other states, Louisiana, uh, and Arizona. And so if you can sequester, you will. Without the pipelines, it's hard to do. But if you can sequester and get $85 a ton, you will, and that will impact our CO supply and CO2 supply in the country. And so today we haven't seen a lot of these shifts because we've lost that pain. So it's made it harder and a lot of headwinds for some of these alternative supplies. But there are some really good ones, and there are a few online right now, and I think you're going to see several more and a lot more in the future. And I really see that being the trend in the future. Again, these larger producers of CO2 will start sequestering and getting their tax credits over time. It's just taking a little bit longer, but there's the options of you have multiple sources. You have biogas sources, which are capturing off dairy waste or landfills. You've got wastewater capture. There's people doing that now, and you've also got there's a company called Remora. They're capturing off of locomotives and rail. That's really, really interesting. Then obviously you have your direct air capture companies that are, there's large scale ones that are doing this to sequester and get tax credits across the world. Those aren't the ones that are going to impact our markets. The ones that are these smaller scale ones. You've got air capture, and you've got Skytree and Carbon Capture Inc. And there's several other ones out there, but there's some great companies that are really focused on lowering the cost per ton produced. And that's what they know they have to do. So the cost and the CapEx have to get in line and get us closer to today's value of CO2. And they're not all quite there yet, but there's some that are kind of ahead of the pack in there. Just named a couple of them that I could see some great applications for it. And dry ice becomes a great one. Biogas has its challenges because it's coming from a very, very dirty source, and getting it cleaned up is absolutely doable, but getting it cleaned up, it adds more cost and more capital to the equation. And then you have some of the momentum going in that direction. But if you make dry ice and you're using it in packaging or using it in blasting, then that's a great outlet for that CO2. And then use the other sources for our beverage grade and our food grade type of CO2s. Not to say that those sources can't get there, but they're great outlets for the dry ice and for the CO2 that we're capturing. But 100%, I see the market shifting more and more to that, because it feeds into what I was saying earlier as well. Rather than very large scale, you can have smaller scale. As Maura noted, some of these are much smaller outputs. Rather than getting 200 or 300 tons per day from a facility, you might be getting 30 to 50 to 70 tons per day. And that's that's a two truckloads a day, if you will, at 60, 70 tons per day, or 3 truckloads a day. The business model just now will change and have to change, but it's also, as you have more regional distributors, which we do, everybody and anybody that wanted to get into it got into it because it's a good market. But now if you have a regional local supply of that CO2 that's very consistent and cost effective, you'll use that and supply yourself as an independent distributor, have your own supply of CO2 off of a waste gas, off of a locomotive, rail switch station. Or again, you could have your own direct air capture system on site, capture your own CO2, you lower your greenhouse emissions on site, be carbon neutral on your own site, and then supply your own CO2 or supply your own dry ice to your own business operations. And all you're doing is paying for the capital expense, but your operating expense long term goes way down because you're not buying CO2 anymore. Those are all great process projects that they're slowly coming to fruition. And now that the tax bill, the big beautiful bill, is passed, 45Q remains intact. There's great tax incentives in there, and as more the CO2 Solutions Coalition, headed by the CGA, helped push the Parity Act in there to say utilization of that captured CO2 gets the same $85 a ton, even more for direct air capture, but the same $85 a ton that we get to sequester. So you will see more and more of these come online now that we have ability and certainty that we'll get these tax breaks and tax incentives to do such.